I thought I knew exactly what I was getting into. An arranged marriage to a man 40 years older than me. A business transaction wrapped in wedding vows. My family's debts erased in exchange for my youth. Cold, calculated, simple. I'd rehearsed my resignation 1,000 times. Told myself I could endure anything for 5 years, maybe 10, however long it took. But nothing could have prepared me for the night he finally took off his mask. My name is Elena, and this is the story of how I discovered that the man I married for money was hiding something far more valuable than wealth. The arrangement was made on a Tuesday. My father sat across from me at our kitchen table, the one we'd eaten at every night for 23 years, and told me there was no other way. Medical bills, business loans, interest compounding like a disease. We were 3 months from losing everything. His name is Victor Ashford, my father said, sliding a photograph across the table. He's 64 years old, widowed, no children. He's willing to clear every debt we have. I picked up the photo. The man looking back at me had silver hair, stern features, and eyes that seemed to look through the camera rather than at it. He wore an expression I couldn't quite read. Not unkind, but distant. Removed. "What does he want?" I asked. My father couldn't meet my eyes. "A wife. Companionship. Someone to be there." The things he didn't say filled the room like smoke. I had 2 days to decide. I spent those 48 hours imagining scenarios, each one worse than the last. An old man's hands on my skin, forced smiles across dinner tables, pretending, always pretending. I researched him obsessively. Victor Ashford, tech industry mogul, 3 patents that revolutionized data encryption, estimated net worth, 400 million, and a recluse. He hadn't been photographed in public for 7 years. No social media presence, no interviews. The most recent article I could find was from 2016, a brief mention in a tech journal about his wife's death. After that, silence. The wedding was small, clinical almost, a judge's office, 2 witnesses I'd never met. Victor wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my father's car. I wore a cream dress my mother had helped me pick out, her hands shaking the entire time we shopped. He didn't smile when I walked in, didn't frown either, just watched me with those same penetrating eyes from the photograph. "Elena," he said, and his voice was surprisingly gentle. "Thank you for coming." As if I'd had a choice. We signed papers, made vows that felt hollow in my mouth, and then it was done. I was Mrs. Victor Ashford, a title that sat on my shoulders like chains made of gold. The house was enormous, a modern estate built into a hillside, all glass and steel and impossible angles, security everywhere, cameras, gates, a staff that seemed to materialize and disappear like ghosts. Victor gave me a tour himself, his hands clasped behind his back, explaining each room with the precision of a museum guide. "This is your space," he said, opening a door to a suite that was larger than my family's entire apartment. "You have complete privacy. I won't enter without your permission." I looked at him, searching for the trap. "And your room?" "The opposite wing." He gestured vaguely. "We each have our own areas." I thought that would be preferable. "I don't understand," I said, even though relief was already flooding through me. "What exactly do you want from me?" Victor was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that changed everything. "I want you to wear this." He pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a medical alert bracelet, sleek, expensive looking, but strange. "If you feel uncomfortable at any time," he explained, "if you want to leave, if something happens, press the button on the side. Security will respond immediately. You'll be taken anywhere you want to go. The arrangement will end. Your family's debts will remain cleared." I stared at the bracelet. "I don't understand." "I know you don't." His eyes held something that might have been sadness. "But I need you to trust that you're safe here. Wear the bracelet. Learn the house, and in 1 week, I'll explain everything." 1 week. 7 days of living in that enormous house like a prisoner in a palace. I had everything I could want: money, space, food prepared by a private chef, a library that would take years to read through completely, but no explanation, no understanding of what I was actually doing there. Victor kept his distance. I'd see him occasionally, always in the same black medical mask that covered the lower half of his face. He wore it constantly, even inside, even when we were alone. At first, I thought it was COVID paranoia or some immune system issue. Rich people had their eccentricities, but there was something else. The way he'd turn his head when he drank water, angling himself away. The way he'd pause before speaking, as if every word required effort. On the 5th day, I heard him cough. I was in the hallway near his wing, somewhere I wasn't supposed to be but couldn't help exploring. The sound that came from his room wasn't normal. It was wet, painful, desperate. It went on for almost 3 minutes, punctuated by gasps that sounded like drowning. Then silence. I stood frozen, unsure whether to knock or run. Before I could decide, the door opened. Victor stood there, mask in place, eyes meeting mine with something that looked like embarrassment. "You weren't supposed to hear that," he said quietly. "Are you sick?" He didn't answer, just looked at me for a long moment, then stepped back into his room and closed the door. The week ended on a Sunday. Victor found me in the library, reading a first edition of something I couldn't focus on. He sat down across from me, and for the first time, I noticed how tired he looked, how the skin around his eyes was drawn, how his hands, resting on his knees, had a slight tremor. "I owe you an explanation," he said. "Yes, you do." He took a breath. Then slowly, carefully, he reached up and removed his mask. I don't know what I expected to see. Disfigurement, maybe? Scars? Something that explained the secrecy. Instead, I saw a face that was gaunt but normal. A face that looked like it belonged to someone much older than 64. A face marked by illness, not injury. "I'm dying," Victor said simply. "Lung disease. Aggressive. Inoperable. I have about 18 months left, maybe less." The room seemed to tilt. "I don't understand," I managed. "Why would you marry someone if you're—" "Because I'm dying alone," he interrupted, and his voice cracked just slightly. "Because I've spent 7 years in this house by myself, and I've realized that money means nothing if you have no one to witness your existence. Because I wanted, just once before the end, to not be invisible." He put the mask back on, but I'd seen enough. Seen the truth written in every tired line, every labored breath. "You didn't need a wife," I said slowly. "You needed a witness." "Yes." The word was almost a whisper. "I needed someone to see me. To know I was here. To remember, after I'm gone, that I existed as more than just a name in business journals." And that's when I understood everything. The bracelet, the separate wings, the complete freedom. He wasn't keeping me prisoner. He was giving me every possible escape route because he knew I'd only stay if I chose to. "I'm not asking for love," Victor continued. "I'm not asking for anything physical. I'm asking for time, for conversation, for someone to sit across from me at dinner and make this enormous house feel less like a mausoleum. I'm paying for companionship in the most literal sense." I should have felt manipulated, tricked. He'd hidden his illness during the arrangement, after all. My family thought they were securing my future with a wealthy husband, not assigning me to witness duty for a dying man. But looking at him, really looking at him, I didn't see manipulation. I saw desperation. Loneliness so profound it had driven him to buy a companion the only way he knew how. "Why me?" I asked. Victor smiled, and even behind the mask I could see it reach his eyes. "Your father's letter, he wrote about you in detail, your art history degree you couldn't afford to use, your volunteer work at hospice care centers, the way you'd spent your mother's last 6 months reading to her every single night, even when she couldn't respond anymore." He paused. I thought, if anyone could understand what I'm asking, it would be someone who's already been a witness to death, someone who knows what it means to just be present. The tears came before I could stop them. Because he was right. I did understand. I'd sat with my mother through her cancer, watched her disappear piece by piece, and the only thing that mattered in those final weeks was that someone was there. Someone saw her. Someone held her hand and confirmed that her life had meant something. Victor had bought himself the thing money usually can't buy. Someone to care that he was dying. The question was whether I could do it. I went to my room that night and called my father. Told him everything. The illness, the truth, the real nature of the arrangement. "You can come home," he said immediately. "We'll figure something else out. You don't have to do this." But here's the thing. I'd spent a week in that house. I'd watched Victor move through his days with careful precision, organizing his life around a death he could feel approaching. I'd seen him pause sometimes, mid-step, and grip the wall while something invisible ravaged him from inside. I'd seen him alone, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that I couldn't leave him like that. "I'm staying," I told my father. "Not because I have to, because I choose to." The next morning, I told Victor my decision over breakfast. He was quiet for a long time, staring at his coffee. Then he said, "There are conditions." "Okay." "You'll be compensated beyond the debt repayment. Significantly, you'll inherit the estate and a substantial trust. And if at any point you want to leave, you can. No questions, no consequences. The money will still be yours." "I don't want your money." "I know." He looked up at me. "That's precisely why I'm giving it to you." And so began the strangest 18 months of my life. We fell into routines, breakfast together at 8. Victor would work in his study, still managing his investments, still sharp as ever mentally, even as his body betrayed him. I'd read, explore the property, take online courses. Lunch was separate, dinner together at 7, and we'd talk. God, we talked about everything. His childhood as a scholarship kid who learned programming on library computers. His late wife Maria, who'd believed in him when he had nothing. The guilt he felt about spending years building an empire while forgetting to build a life. The patents he'd sold too early. The ones he'd held too long. His regrets. His small victories. I told him about art history, about the paintings I'd never see in person, about my mother's love for Monet, about feeling like I'd failed by ending up in an office job analyzing spreadsheets instead of catalogs. "You haven't failed," Victor said one night, 3 months in. "You're 23. You have time to become whoever you want to be." "I'm watching you run out of time," I replied. "It's hard to believe I have any left." He smiled behind his mask. Then we're both learning the same lesson, just from different angles. The first hospitalization happened in month 6. I came home from a drive to find the house empty, silent. The security team informed me he'd been taken by ambulance 2 hours earlier. Respiratory failure. They'd tried to call me, but I'd left my phone behind. I drove to the hospital like I was on fire. Found him in ICU, tubes and wires turning him into a medical tree, machines breathing for him because his lungs had finally given up. The doctor said 72 hours would tell us if he'd recover or if this was the beginning of the end. I sat by his bed for 3 days straight, talked to him even though he was unconscious, read him art history books, described paintings he'd never see, told him about the Monet exhibit I'd found online, about the way water lilies looked when light hit them just right, about nothing, about everything. On hour 68, his eyes opened. "Elena," he whispered, his voice destroyed by intubation. "I'm here," I said, and realized I was crying. "I'm right here." "You stayed." "Of course I stayed, you idiot. Where else would I be?" He smiled, actually smiled, and something in my chest cracked open that I hadn't known was closed. That's when I realized the truth. Somewhere between the careful dinners and the late-night conversations and the morning routines, I'd stopped being his paid companion. I'd become his friend. Maybe more than his friend. I loved him. Not in spite of his dying, not because of his money, but because he was kind and brilliant and funny in this dry, unexpected way. Because he listened like every word I said mattered. Because he'd seen me, really seen me, in a way no one ever had. And he was still dying. The doctors gave him 3 more months, maybe 4. His lungs were failing faster now. The mask wasn't optional anymore. It was connected to oxygen, helping him breathe. He moved slower, slept more, had days where getting out of bed felt like climbing Everest. But he was still Victor, still sharp, still present. "Tell me your dream," he said one afternoon, both of us sitting on the terrace watching the sunset. "My dream?" "The art history, the career you never got to have. Tell me what you would do if money wasn't an issue." I told him, the whole elaborate fantasy, curating exhibits at a major museum, bringing art to people who'd never thought it was for them, creating programs for kids who'd never set foot in a gallery, making beauty accessible. Victor listened, oxygen hissing softly through his mask. "Do it," he said when I finished. "Do what?" "After I'm gone. Use the money." "Build your dream. You have time, Elena. Don't waste it the way I did." "You didn't waste anything." "I wasted years." His eyes were steady on mine. "I built an empire and forgot to build a life. Don't make my mistake. Promise me." "Victor, promise me you'll live, really live. That's all I want. To know that something good came from this, that you get the time I didn't." I took his hand, felt how thin it had become, how fragile. "I promise," I whispered. The end came on a Tuesday, full circle from where we started. I woke up and knew, the way you sometimes just know. Went to his room, found him awake, mask on, staring at the ceiling. "It's today," he said quietly. "I know. I'm scared." "I know," I said again, climbing into the bed beside him, careful of the tubes and wires. "But you're not alone. That's the whole point. You're not alone." He turned his head to look at me. "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for letting me." We stayed like that for hours, me holding him breathing, each breath harder than the last. No machines this time. He'd signed the paperwork weeks ago. Natural death, peaceful as possible. "Elena," he said, as afternoon light painted the walls gold. "I'm here." "I know. That's the miracle." His eyes closed. "That's the whole miracle." His last breath was at 4:47 p.m. I held him for another hour, crying into his shoulder, grieving the man who'd bought my time and accidentally given me purpose. Who'd shown me that witnessing someone, really seeing them, being present for them, was maybe the most important thing any of us could do. The funeral was small, just me and a handful of business associates who barely knew him. I spoke. Told them about the man behind the patents, the man who loved old jazz and terrible puns, the man who'd been lonely enough to buy a companion and kind enough to set her free. The will was read 2 days later. Everything to me. The house, the money, the investments, $407 million, and a letter. "Elena, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Thank you for the greatest gift of my life, your time, your presence, your witness. I've set up a foundation in your name, 50 million to start, with a board ready to help you build whatever you envision. The art programs, the accessibility initiatives, your dream, the rest is yours. Live, Elena. Fall in love with someone who has time to grow old with you. Travel, create, make mistakes, waste afternoons, do all the things I forgot to do until it was too late. But most importantly, remember what you taught me, that being seen, really seen, by another person is what makes us human. That witnessing each other's existence is the most valuable currency we have. You saw me, you stayed, you made my death bearable by making my life visible. Now go make yourself visible. Let the world see you. With more gratitude than I can express, Victor. I'm standing in the grand opening of the Ashford Initiative for Accessible Art 5 years later. A program that brings museum-quality exhibits to underserved communities. That teaches kids from backgrounds like mine that art isn't just for rich people in galleries. That beauty belongs to everyone. The walls are covered with Monets, water lilies catching light exactly the way I described them to Victor in that hospital room. My team is here, my family, and yes, someone special. Someone who came into my life 2 years ago and is slowly teaching me that I can have time with someone, that not all love comes with expiration dates. But tonight, standing here, I'm thinking about Victor, about the old man I married for money who taught me the most valuable lesson I've ever learned, that being present for another human being, truly present, is the closest thing we have to magic. People ask me sometimes if I regret it. The arranged marriage, the 18 months watching someone die. I tell them the truth. Those 18 months gave me more purpose than the previous 23 years combined. Victor didn't trap me. He freed me. Not with money, though that helped, but by showing me what matters. Time isn't what we have, it's what we give, and who we give it to. So if you're watching this, wondering if your time matters, if being present for someone is enough, trust me, it is. It's everything. Be someone's witness. Let someone witness you. That's not just living, that's the whole point. And if you've stayed with me this whole time, if you've witnessed this story, thank you. That means something too, more than you know.